together. This is my poem. This is what I created from my story. Now, a lot of times when we do a poem, we change the way it looks. Because when I just wrote it as a story, remember those words were just all over the page, right? It's just kind of just a story. So then I took that and decided to make a poem.
Can we bring a writer's notebook like that?
Yeah, you can have whatever kind of notebook you want. My title, Don't Wanna Go to Sleep. So that's my title. Difficult night, refusing to sleep. Yelling, screaming, wailing, squealing. Crying his eyes out. What to do? Trying to comfort, feeling frustrated, sighing, breathing, huffing, puffing, pulling my hair out. What to do? Rocking, patting, singing, whispering. It seems to be working. Eyes are drooping. I am hoping for sweet, sweet rest. Ah, finally, relief. No more crying, no more sighing. Baby's fast asleep. Mama's happy as can be. Pure satisfaction for baby and me. That was the end. I think this was real meaningful because they felt like I became part of the community more. They're writing, and they're writing poetry. Now, I've written a piece, and so now we're all sharing in going through the steps together of how to get there. And for me to actually walk them through what I did, that just makes a comfort level for them to be able to go through those steps and get to a final piece. So it was very meaningful for me and them. This was important, so I did what? This right here. Because I was really wanting this, wasn't I? And he was wanting it too, even though he didn't know it. So we both wanted this.
Miss Charlie, why do you just write it small and then put the exclamation mark?
Well, that's one thing about a poet. You can do it however you want. There's no rules if you want to write your poetry a certain way. So you're looking at all these marks. Why did I do that? I did a lot of those things for pauses. So when you read it, you can pause. And for emphasis, I really wanted to finally relief. Because I was excited about this. I'm finally feeling a sense of relief. So this is what kind of poem? Which kind is it? What were our two kinds yesterday? So which kind is this?
Lightning.
You feel it, don't you? And it also has some. Thank you, Joy. Joy says his eyes are drooping. That's something I can see.
We can see that his eyes are drooping.
That's descriptive.
Or you can put fake tears on there. You can
Going like this?
Yes, thunderbolt. You can put that.
Now.
The baby.
Yes.
Another way is every time you get into like.
Oh, wait just a minute. I'm trying to hear Brooklyn. I can't. Sit down.
Every time, like when you said difficult night, refusing to sleep, and every time you get to the individual words of how he was doing it, you went down.
Oh.
And every time you did it, you went 4 lines down, like yelling, screaming, wailing, squealing.
Also, I had a, what going? A
rhyming.
Yeah?
Pattern.
There was a pattern, wasn't it? Thank you. She pointed out some important stuff there. It was difficult to do because it takes a lot of time to really sit down and think about what you want to create when you also have lesson plans and classroom management and everything else that you have to think about. But I enjoyed doing it, and it helped me grow as a writer to be able to do it and put it public in front of the students and get feedback from them. Because a lot of teachers are afraid to get that kind of feedback. But it helps you grow. to describe what was going on.
You know, a teacher who doesn't feel as comfortable with writing can be one of the best mentors for children, because a lot of children feel that way. If you don't feel comfortable with your writing yourself, you just be honest about that. And, you know, teachers don't really need to write so much so that kids see how to write well. Teachers need to write so that children can see someone else going through the process, and so that teachers will understand that process. And I think if writing is hard for you, in a lot of ways, it puts you in a better position as a teacher of writing, because you understand that. It's so incredible and important for kids to see that in their teacher. The honesty of, this is hard, but I'll do it too, you know, alongside you.
Every time I bring something in of my own, you know, my heart starts beating really quickly, and I start sweating, and I let them know what I'm not happy with, and I do all the same things that I tell them not to do. Don't apologize for your writing, just share it and enjoy the moment. And I think when they see that, it makes such a big difference. They're so much more willing to bring in their own writing and to talk about their own writing. But every time, it gets a little easier, but it's still, writing's personal. It's yours. And every time I bring my own writing in, I get nervous.
It's funny that I've never thought of myself as a storyteller. And then as I've taught, I've realized that I love to tell stories, and I love to tell my stories. And when I tell my stories, you know, it impacts them, and they also make connections to the stories that I have. What I want to look at today, I want to look through my notebook, because I want to look for an idea for a nonfiction piece. Okay, and we know what a nonfiction piece is, right? Yes. What's a nonfiction piece? Okay. Brandon, what's a nonfiction piece?
Something that's real?
Something that is real, right? A fact, something that's real. And actually, I already marked a few pages, but I'm going to kind of go through and I'm going to show you some of the things that I did to try to find a nonfiction piece. So I just started going real quick through my notebook. And the first one I noticed was los abarrotes are popular in Mexico. And then I thought abarrotes, you know, could I think about that as a writing piece? And you guys know abarrotes in Mexico, right? Are the little stores, the little shops throughout. And I thought, no, you know, I didn't think that the abarrotes would be a good thing to look through. And then there's this story about my brother. Of course, my brother's always in my stories. Yeah. And that one didn't work. But the next one, immediately, as soon as I read, even I have a little title, Fireflies. And then even though my story has nothing to do with fireflies, it says, Fireflies, Bees, and Mayates. What wonderful memories. I especially like the bee story, and that's about the bees that my brother raised. But I'm not going to talk about the bees. What I thought about is fireflies. And I thought, wow, you know, how do fireflies, you know, get that little light to go on? Yeah, why? You know, I mean, it's not like they have electricity. But I don't want an answer from anybody in the classroom, because this is going to be a nonfiction piece. And I'm going to have to go out and look for the facts on fireflies. And so when I thought that, I marked that because I thought that might be a really good project for me to look at. Why do fireflies have that little light? And I went on with my notebook, and then I found another one. Let's see, which one was this one? Oh, on this one it says, hurry, Sylvia, you turn the 3 pumps on. And Ramon ran and opened the gates. And I remember that was the time when my brother and I burned that field. Did I tell you about that? And we burned that, what was it, like 20 acres? And then when I saw that, and I thought the 3 pumps, and I thought, how does that water come from underground and brings it all up? And then there's all that water that comes out. So when I saw the pump and I started thinking about the pumps, how do they work? You know, how do they bring that water up? And I thought that might be a really interesting thing to look up, you know, how does that work? And, you know, and who invented this whole idea of pumping the water out of the ground and then it comes out and it's just like, and I remember it just was so cold. So that might be another, you know, thing that I might look up. Why is it so cold? And then the last one that I was looking at was going to Mexico, the canning fruit at the ranch was a hot tiring. And when I got to that, I remember Mark asking me a question when the first time that I read that. And it still kept coming back to me, and I thought, he said, how do you can? How do you can? And I thought, well, if somebody's asking that question, maybe, it's something that I really want to look into, how do people can? And then if I decided to do that, what would that writing piece look like? And so I started thinking back at some of the books that I read, and one of the books that I found was the one I read to you this week, and that's why I read it to you this week. I like the way Tommy de Paola put some nonfiction and fiction into his writing piece. And so I was thinking, how can I take the whole canning and the history of canning and how canning works and put it into a nonfiction like Tommy de Paola did? And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, who would read a book about canning? It's just like a big deal. And then I started looking at more books, and then I found a book about people who eat rice. And I thought, well, somebody wrote that book and people read it. I've read it. Maybe some of you have read, that book about rice. And I thought, well, maybe canning might be a good idea. So right now, that's where I'm at. I'm thinking canning is the way to go for me. So I think I might go to canning. And what I want you guys to do in a few minutes, I want you to go to your notebooks, and I want you to do the same thing that I've done. Just go through your. You're gonna work with a partner, and just read real quick, and maybe a word will pop out. Will just kind of stand out for you, and think about: is that something that I could research? Is that something I can look up? And is that something that I can make into a nonfiction piece? Mark? The other thing that happens is that the more stories I tell them, then, they want to hear the next one. And sometimes as I'm sitting down and I'm writing in my notebook, and they come up and it's like, what are you doing in there? What are you writing? And so they're curious, and I like to share. So I think that I've realized that I am a storyteller, and I like to tell the stories, and they're fun, and the kids enjoy them.
It gives me more ideas on how I'm going to present the lesson if I go through it myself. And I think that's really important, to try to go through that process yourself. And like with science, you try to do the experiment yourself so you know what to predict. And I think that's the same for writing, especially writing, because I think it's hard. I think it's one of the hardest things that we're learning to do. And I think this kind of experience in writing will hopefully make it less so for them, that they'll have an easier time and feel more confident in themselves as writers. That's what I want. I want them to feel like they can write and feel confident in that there's lots of things that they can write about that they care about, and that there's an audience for the thoughts that they have.